Welcome, everyone. This is Recovery Dharma in the Spokane Sangha, and I am so happy to share with you the work of the Bodhisattva, the way of the Bodhisattva by Shantideva as it lives and breathes in me. Shantideva has a very typical hero's journey story, if we put it in the context of mythology. In mythology, when we're creating legends or when we're telling the stories of ancient people in mythological legendary form, there are many key elements involved in creating heroes. One of them is the riches to rags story line concept. The other is an individual throws off their life, goes and has this wild adventure, and then comes back and teaches about it. A third is an individual who stays within a community and lives a very ordinary life, doing all kinds of extraordinary things. Shantideva meets those three main mythological components, even though he was a real life person. But we have just the legends of him, the stories that have been told over time, over the years. He was born in the 8th century. So just let that sit with you for a second. The 8th century. And like the Buddha, he was a very, very wealthy young man. And for all kinds of reasons, most of them not really known, there's all kinds of embellishments about why he decided to throw off his merchant son's riches, the fine clothing, the fine dining, the comfortable lifestyle. And instead, he went to Nalanda University in India, an extraordinary community of scholars studying Buddhism, and there he joined ascetic communities to study in depth these ancient Buddhist teachings. And the thing I love about Shantideva, among all things, is he was completely radical and a rebel. So, and he pissed people off. Like, he was the spoon in a lot of people's emotional cauldrons. Why? Because he didn't fall in line. He didn't conform to all of the rules. In fact, he didn't attend classes. He didn't stress. He was the lone guy on campus doing his thing, totally unfazed by the stressors of striving and achieving and knowing and competing and comparing. And some of his peers were completely annoyed with him and were like, what's up with this dude? I mean, let's let him have it. Let's humiliate this guy, which is an ironic thing when you consider a Buddhist community. I mean, to intentionally be motivated to humiliate and cause harm is really counter to what you would think is going on in this community. But what I love about that aspect of it is it reminds us that this is just so very human. So In the tradition of this university, which, by the way, the ruins of it exist to this day, they had periodically this area of the university, kind of like in ancient Greece, where it was sort of this arena in a way. And they would feature scholars, noble teachers, and so forth. And an audience would gather and they would teach. And it was this really prestigious kind of thing. So Shantideva's peers were like, dude, we want you to be our teacher. So they nominated him and he accepted, and he was going to be, this standout teacher. And they even went so far, the story goes, to build a throne seat that was that much higher, to make it that much more difficult for him to rise up to it. And they really just wanted to keep him on tilt. Story goes, day of the talk, he waltzes in, Shantideva waltzes in, not a care in the world, sees the elevated throne, scrambles up it without so much as increasing his heart rate, sits down, gets comfy. His peers are snickering, anticipating, and Shantideva very calmly asks the audience, do you want to hear something that you've heard, something that you're familiar with, a basic Dharma talk, or do you want to hear something new? And they were all like, whoa, let's hear something new. And so, without anything written down, Shantideva took a noble posture, seated on the cushions, cross-legged, and gave his teaching on the way of the Bodhisattva. And what I learned from Pema Chodron recently, and this was an aspect of Shantideva's story I didn't know, is that he had been contemplating this for months and months. That's what he was doing instead of going to class. He was picking up conversations, just being in that environment. But what he really wanted to do was to find a way for himself, to create a roadmap, if you will, for himself, a guide that enabled him to maintain a pure mind and a pure heart, to basically be a good person and to help alleviate suffering whenever it arose in himself and in others. And that teaching became the way of the Bodhisattva. And because of its purity, because of its virtue, it exists today, which is extraordinary, that there are multiple interpretations of it and translations of it. Its essence lives today. And I think that's amazing and beautiful. So let's bring Shantideva into our awareness. We don't know what he looked like exactly, but you can imagine a young man in his 20s in India wearing the clothes of a monk, probably not wearing shoes. And just consider him in all his humanness. He had friends. He also had people who were envious of him, obviously, jealous. People who were taunting him and teasing him, people who were supporting him. He came from a background of privilege. So within him, even as a young man, He probably was instilled with a great sense of self-confidence, self-awareness, acceptance. He grew up in an environment where he wasn't lacking for anything, food, medicine, clothing, so he was a healthy human being. Because he was wealthy as a young person, he was educated. So he already had access to critical thinking, which is what enabled him to break from the traditions of conformity and to redefine belonging for himself and be a free thinker. And because of all of that privilege and because of his sacrifice, we can study for ourselves how to enact the Bodhisattva within, the one who is here to help alleviate suffering. At the end of the day, that is what a Bodhisattva is. We can talk about this culturally in terms of the religious and spiritual aspects and beliefs of what a bodhisattva means in the cultural terms of the Buddhist practice. That's one way of looking at it. I like to look at it from the perspective of my culture, which is I'm a white Western woman. And so for me right now, whether there's rebirth or not, I don't really spend a whole lot of time trying to know the answer to that. Instead, what I do is I have this precious human life. I'm here. And because I'm here, I belong here. And what am I going to do with my precious human life if not try to alleviate suffering? That's it. So a bodhisattva, in my mind anyway, is nothing extraordinary. I think each and every one of us is created to bring forward this nature. And whether we can alleviate suffering because we are someone called to build wells in third world countries, or to work for the Peace Corps, volunteer with the Peace Corps, or to do any number of other large-scale things, that's one way to enact alleviating suffering. Another way that is every bit as important is to lessen suffering within. So I'd like to begin our adventure by allowing the spirit of Shantideva to light a gentle fire within you. To remember that you are carving your own bodhisattva way. And you already have full permission to do this in your own way and in your own time. You have all the wisdom you need, and this study is simply going to help create the conditions for that wisdom to rise up and be heard in your own voice, unique to you. And that's what we need in the world. We don't need more Shantidevas. We need each of us, inspired by his mastery. So if we treat this adventure like climbing a mountain, and we keep our attention focused on the enormity of the task ahead, we fail to fully see and embrace the wonder of the first step and then the next step. And so this is going to be a practice of coming back to one breath, one step, one thought, one moment of alleviating suffering. And we're going to begin with ourselves. So let's spend a few minutes just breathing this in and maybe posing a question. What am I already doing to lessen my own discomfort, to lessen my own dissatisfaction, confusion, malcontent? These are all the synonyms associated with suffering. And just create space as you're breathing for your wisdom to come forward. And my wish for us all is that we stay open, soft, and delighted by what our wisdom is trying to tell us. And in the meantime, what I'd love to do for our dedication of merit is, Max, could I trouble you? Would you please read Shantideva's prayer one more time? And would you please read it just a little bit slower?
I can try to do it slower. Yeah, I tend to do things fast, but yeah, thank you for inviting me to do that and for offering me the opportunity to slow down with it. And yeah, that reminder. Thank you, Julia.
You're welcome.
The Shantideva prayer. May I become, at all times, both now and forever, a protector of those without protection, a guide for those who have lost their way, a ship for those with oceans to cross, a bridge for those with rivers to cross, a sanctuary for those in danger, a lamp for those without light, a place of refuge for those who lack shelter, and a servant to all in need. For as long as space endures, and for as long as living beings remain, until then may I, too, abide to dispel the misery of the world.
Thank you so much, Max. Friends, thank you for being such wise teachers to me and to this whole community. May the next step you take today have a reverent approach, and may you recognize that the whole of your life is sacred. And I'll take a moment to bow to that sacredness, Buddhas to be. Namaste, friends.